Jesus never walked here, and no battles were fought atop this mountain. Yet it is one of the most important sites in biblical history. Now, new discoveries are putting to rest decades of debate about Qumran and the people who lived here. Each day at dawn, as the sun rises and bathes the hillside in hues of rose and gold, a crew sets up tents in the cool morning breeze. Dr. Randall Price of Liberty University leads a team that is only the third in history to undertake a major excavation on the Qumran Plateau.
And this was a community unlike present-day Judaism. They were looking for their Messiah. They understood the scriptures. And so that fits more with what we understand, certainly in terms of the New Testament.
They were looking for Jesus Christ.
They had a very clearly defined understanding of who the Messiah was from the Old Testament scriptures, but then they had a developed view through the time between the Testaments, which is reflected here.
At this site, pottery and its contents will help define who lived at Qumran. One discovery has already drawn a direct connection to the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is the only intact oil lamp that's been found out here?
There was one just like this with a little shorter nozzle that was found in Cave 1 where the original scrolls were first found. It didn't have this little handle on the end. This is a Qumran-style oil lamp. It's around the 1st century BC. And so it's very unique, and it was found right here on the plateau along again with these deposits.
And the fact that you found this within the community and similar pieces in the caves really draws a tight connection between the community and the caves in the writing of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, certainly in the time period as well.
Previously, some scholars speculated the people of Qumran, the Essenes, simply stored the scrolls after they were brought there from Jerusalem. Some even suggested the Essenes knew nothing about the scrolls whatsoever. For years, liberal scholars tried to say that Qumran wasn't a religious community, but a couple of discoveries really refuted that idea pretty solidly. Now first, oddly enough, was the location of their latrines. Now 2 different religious texts, believed to have been written by the people that lived right here, spelled out very specifically where latrines were to be located, far outside of the community, and how they were supposed to be used. So archaeologists followed those instructions like a treasure map. And it led them all the way up here, which is a really long walk to go to the bathroom. With the proposed latrine site pinpointed, they started digging. Now, they didn't find any structures up here, but biological archaeologists took a lot of soil samples. And what they did find were the desiccated or completely dried out remains of 3 different types of parasites, only found in the human digestive system, which is really gross, but still kind of fascinating. No one knows exactly why Qumran was abandoned, but the reason may be connected to diseases caused by those numerous latrine rules. Their practices, which included having to wash in a communal bath after returning from the distant latrine, actually allowed parasites to flourish and spread. At the time, roughly half the population lived to be at least 40. But in Qumran, only 6% of the Essenes lived to be that old. Those rules in the distant latrines were meant to help keep the community pure and clean. So it may seem like a surprise that Price and his team have also found numerous animal bone deposits very close to the settled area.
We're finding hundreds of these burials, very carefully done. It's, by the way, the only place in the whole world we know of this kind of thing. And so they're taking the remains of meals that they ate, a communal meal, the ashes from the meal, the pottery that was used to cook the meal, the cooking pots and other things, the plates, the bowls, everything they served the meal in, and then they're burying them along with the bones and the ashes outside the community, what they considered a clean place. That shows a concern for Jewish ritual law.
Price believes the people who lived here were partaking in the Messianic banquet, a direct precursor to the Last Supper and Holy Communion. Its origins are found in the Old Testament book of Isaiah.
On this mountain, the Lord Almighty will prepare a feast of rich food for all peoples, a banquet of aged wine, the best of meats and the finest of wines.
That text is also reflected in a Dead Sea Scroll known as the Messianic Rule.
There it talks about people sitting down for some kind of a communal meal.
They shall eat in common and bless in common and deliberate in common.
But it talks about the bread and the wine, the high priest, and then after him, the Messiah of Israel.
And when the table has been prepared for eating, and the new wine for drinking, the priest shall be the first to stretch out his hand to bless the first fruits of the bread and wine. They shall separate from the habitation of unjust men, as it is written, prepare in the wilderness, make straight in the desert a path for our God.
Now they anticipated this based on the Isaiah passage being in Jerusalem. So I think they're perhaps rehearsing that here in a way as later Christians did when they took the bread and took the wine, and it was anticipatory of the Lord's death until he comes. So they're looking for the Messiah to come, and then the bones and everything related to it, because this was a sacred meal, the vessels and things that cooked the meal could not be used for common use again.
So just as the sacrifices in the temple were treated as sacred and buried outside the temple area ritualistically, we're seeing the same sort of thing here.
I think so. These are probably people who were priests connected with the temple at some point. They came out here separating from the community in Jerusalem, but they're following the same religious law.
Each day, their work takes them closer to the culture of the people who lived here. They begin at dawn to avoid the overbearing desert heat. The work is slow and difficult, and they have to be meticulously careful, even though it takes pickaxes to break through the sometimes rock-solid ground. Even the smallest discoveries can prove significant.
We also have a jar handle we found just this season with a stamp in it.
So at first glance, you find something like this. It's a nice diagnostic piece, but
Right.
flip it over and you find a nice seal there.
Right.
While the jar handle is considerably eroded, experts at Hebrew University believe that is the Jerusalem seal from the Hasmonean period, roughly a century before Christ. Similar examples have been found in Jerusalem's Jewish quarter, but it's the first discovered at Qumran.
And that will give us the kind of dating we need in sites like this.
After a few hours of hard work, the team gathers for a late breakfast. It's interesting, we're breaking bread in sort of the same general location where they would have been people in this community enjoying the Messianic feast. You have to think of that every time you sit down for breakfast.
We do. I mean, as our hands reach into the soil and touch the remains of their culture, we're kind of reproducing the same kind of cultural lifestyle, being in the same place.
Yeah, something not too many people have had the opportunity to experience.
That's right.
Soon it's back to work. With this season wrapped up, Price will need the next few years to analyze and present the data and to test some theories. Now, do you see a relationship between the animals that were slaughtered here and the skins used in the writing of the Dead Sea Scrolls?
It's a possibility. We can get ancient DNA from the bones where the collagen's still intact. And so we're going to do DNA analysis also on the scrolls and see if we can have a link between the two. If so, conclusively can prove that those who lived here and had that meal are those who also produced the scrolls. It's the DNA between the two that'll make that connection.
Though they only lived there for a short period of time, the people of Qumran left behind perhaps the most important documents in recorded history. Documents that speak of a banquet for the coming Messiah. And that seems to be a really strong connection between Old Testament and New Testament.
It is, and this is why the Dead Sea Scrolls are so important to Christian studies or New Testament studies, because they lived in a time when Jesus came and the formation of the church was taking place, and it's the only opportunity we have to see this narrow window that no one else explained to us. The Pharisees, the Sadducees left no writings, but these people did. And so we can see the material culture, like we're doing through an excavation, we can put that together with the written records and have a complete understanding of the time.
Right now, it appears the people of Qumran gathered together for ritual meals, honoring a Redeemer, the Christ, who wouldn't come for another 100 years. Through the work of Price and others, who these people were, what they believed, and how they celebrated the coming of the Messiah is slowly coming to light.